Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Binge Books Book Club live author chat. I am here today with R.B. Scow, and we are talking all about his books, Tears of Odessa, along with his other writing. So welcome so much. I'm going to call you Ryan, if that's okay, and
Come on,
welcome
Colby.
to the chat. Absolutely. If you are watching live, don't be shy. Feel free to jump in the chat, ask your questions. We're going to get to as many of them as possible as we go. So, Ryan, Tears of Odessa. Well, first, do you want to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about yourself to the audience?
Yeah, my name's Ryan Scow. I write under R.B. Scow for the Alice Hargrove series, but the book that I'm finishing now, which is the fifth book in the series, is called The Butcher of Caracas. That's actually my 43rd book. So I have 5 books under this name, but I write under a pen name. I do post-apocalyptic fiction. I did 10 books in fantasy when I was starting out, urban fantasy. So I've got a bit of diversity, but I really want to kind of channel all of my, I guess, all of my younger passions. I loved reading espionage and police procedural. So I kind of grew up reading a lot of that, and I thought I really want to do something like that. So this has been a passion project for me. So yeah, the Alice Hargrove series is 5 books, and they're my favorite 5 books. So
I love that. And I love that you transitioned. I was saying I started writing romance, but then really moved into suspense, which was my passion.
yeah.
So, yeah. So, writing, just before we jump into Tears of Odessa, the differences between the two genres, we were talking about this in a Binge Books meeting earlier. Post apoc has so much going on, like external activity. Is it hard when you remove all of that outside excitement, and all of that excitement kind of has to come from the story itself? Did that take an adjustment, or was that an easy transition to make?
It was an easy transition only because I write pretty action heavy, violent post-apoc. I thought it wasn't really that violent, but I've got martial arts experience. I got about 11, 12 years of martial arts experience, a couple 2-degree black belts, 2 second-degree black belts in different arts. So I've got a pretty good understanding of violence. So I thought I'd bring, some real world experience in a street level. So post-apocalyptic fiction was perfect for that. When I moved over to this, I did have to make some adjustments. And I really spent a lot of time thinking about it because espionage has been done really, really well. Right, you got Vince Flynn, that does the Mitch Rapp series, which I love, and then you move to Lee Child, and he does a fantastic job with Jack Reacher. That's kind of his own thing, and then you have some military fiction, and probably my favorite author and a friend of mine writes the David Rivers series, which is probably Jason Casper, which is probably one of my favorite series ever. And so you have a lot of guys that really do this genre very, very well. So I thought, how can I do something kind of fun and different and really cut it in the middle? So I read a lot of reviews from readers that, a lot of readers will get tangled up in kind of the procedural elements of police procedure. And then in the military fiction or espionage too, a lot of guys get tangled up in, what happens there. And I thought, how can I cut the middle and do the stuff that I know, which is street level stuff. And so I thought, this is where I can do something different. So now I have Atlas Hargrove, who's basically a disgraced police officer who lands himself 3 life sentences in prison. And I really wanted the international flair only because with COVID we couldn't really travel. So I've been itching to travel. So we talked about Russia a little bit earlier and Ukraine, where this book is set. And I ended up doing a tremendous amount of research for this as best as I could. Plus, I have readers who are friends in both Russia and Ukraine, so I leaned on some of them. And this series was born. It's very different, but it also hits the same tropes as you would expect through an action adventure thriller. So.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you found a niche and then wrote in it. And it was interesting because you said about COVID, because you write at such a furious pace. It's amazing. So did you write all 5 of these books since COVID has started? Because I know they've released very quickly.
Well, I actually wrote Tears of Odessa, and then I wrote a 5-book series, and then I wrote in post-apocalyptic fiction. Then I came back and wrote the second, The Butcher in Caracas, and then The Butcher of Juarez, and then I wrote a 3-book post-apoc series, and then I did the last 3. So I'm finishing up right now. I'm in edits. I've got 2 days left to get the Butcher of Caracas done and get it to my editor, and then it releases June 9th. So, and that'll be the fifth book in the series, and I think we'll probably wrap it up at that, but we'll see what the readers say. They seem to love Atlas Hargrove.
So you wrote all of those all during COVID. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah, my wife
I
didn't
hope
see
we
me.
don't have any fellow authors yet on the chat because we're all dying of embarrassment.
Uh,
I love.
Oh no, I write like crazy, but I've always written. I've been writing for like 20, 25 years. And, it's very hard to get the traditional route. Back in the day before Amazon, we all struggled to get into the traditional route. You did it and you succeeded, which is awesome. I didn't. So I wrote probably 8 books trying to get something published and never could really get my foot into it. And then I saw Amazon. I'm like, okay, well, the readers are going to tell me whether they're good or not.
Mhm.
And that really is a true test. And there's no barriers to entry to get in at this point in time. Everything you do well, you either sink or swim on. And so I jumped into the market at that point in time, already having been writing while going through college, 15 to 18 hours a week and working a 60 to 70 hour week job. So I learned how to write fast.
Out of
And
necessity. Yeah.
what's that?
Out of necessity. You only had small windows, right?
Yeah.
You were working full time.
Yeah, but I studied a lot too on story structure. I read a lot. I read anywhere from 50 to 100 books a week, or excuse me, a month, not a week, a year. I don't have that much time in the day, but yeah, I read probably 50 to 100 books a year and really learned story. I spent a lot of time studying craft, and so it made it actually pretty easy to get in and do this, believe it or not. And I used to think this was an easy job, but a lot of people struggle and it's not. And so I kind of take it for granted a little bit that I'm pretty good with story, but it's better than what I was doing before. So
Yeah, no, I love that. So talking about this specific story,
yeah.
can you give just kind of an elevator pitch? I know you just did a great intro to the main character, but can you talk about what happens in this book without giving anything away?
Yeah, this is really kind of a story of redemption, where strength of family is the guiding principle for the character. Um, I've been married with my wife for 30 years now, almost 30 years now, and you kind of learn the struggles of marriage, especially in the later years. I consider the later years after my parents divorced. So anything after 25 years is tough. But no, I learned in the later years, some of the struggles, and was able to incorporate some of that into Atlas's character. But really, what happens is his daughter is kidnapped, and he's gone 6 years at this point, or 4 years at this point in time, without really seeing her. His wife has kind of given up on the struggle, but Atlas can't quite let go. And so he ends up having just a hurricane of bad news come in a single day and completely blows his life apart. He ends up in prison. And so what happens at that point in time is he felt like at that point in time he was useless until he has a big money financier come in with an idea that he would have a perfect alibi and he could operate overseas, trying to hunt down child traffickers. So it's a very kind of pie in the sky premise. And I thought, how do I do this and make this real? And I felt like I was able to kind of make that happen. So like I say, the readers seem to enjoy it. They're the true tell. and then that spawned this 5-book series so far, which is a story arc of finding his daughter. And I have a personal thing. It's I'm close to people who have pulled people out of child trafficking situations, gone there, and it's kind of a passion with me. I have a principle: don't mess with kids. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I can imagine, there's so much research involved with these stories. And I thought, you did such a great job with the police side of things. That's always a lot of moving parts. And and then I was curious if you had, it's a dark area to research, but going into child trafficking and that sort of thing, you do address so many different things, also moving the whole book and scenes to another country. So was there a lot of research involved in this? Was a lot of it just pieces you already knew from your reading and your
I've studied it quite a bit at length. Just like I said, I've got people who go into countries and pull people out of those situations. But I'm in a port city too, which is Sacramento. I'm about 30 miles outside of Sacramento, but Sacramento is a port city, and so we have a lot of trafficking that goes on at one of our main malls, which is about 5 miles away from me. So they have it's pretty active trafficking, unfortunately, in this area. At least it has been. But the research is dark. It's not fun. I got to pull myself out out of a place. I think I was researching, I think it was the third book, The Betrayal of Prague, and that got too dark. I had to pull out for a couple weeks and just get my mind clear. It's ugly though, it really is, and more than anything, it's sad because as writers, you know, we put ourselves in the position of thinking in terms of our character, and we go, okay, if
Yeah,
I'm going to feel right. And so when I put myself into some of these positions, it's unfortunately it's pretty dark. So I try to keep some of the darkness out of it, and keep the vigilante justice in it. So I think I have a pretty good balance. Plus, I'm a natural born smartass, so having a sense of humor makes it makes it really easy to try and take the edge off some of those tougher scenes. So I learned in post-apoc how to balance, you know, tough things with a sense of
light
humor.
with, yeah, and you really need it. Yeah, that you had
You
such
do.
great training
Yeah.
coming from that background. What about I had notes to ask about Vacaville. Is it Vacaville? Is that right? Vacaville. And we had a question from the audience. Did you grow up in Vacaville? So, you know, what made you choose these two locations, Vacaville and Russia?
Yeah, so Vacaville is interesting. Vacaville's about 45 minutes from my house. I didn't grow up there, but my brother-in-law was Vacaville SWAT. So he worked as a SWAT officer out there for years. And that actually, one of his personal experiences, it influenced the first scene in the book. The first scene in the book is pretty tough. It's about a car chase. It's a police chase, and these guys that they're chasing run over a bunch of kids and kill a bunch of kids, and this is what, you know, sets Atlas off. And so that I talked to my brother-in-law before I started writing this, and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about writing this," because he had some pretty heavy emotions around it. And you know, as an officer too, you know, he could kind of help guide me through the scene and how everything went down. And that particular scene kind of wrecked him. And we talked about it a lot over the years. And I asked him, I says, you know, what were you thinking at that time? And, you know, expletives aside, he said, every single officer who was on the scene wanted to kill this guy. Like, this guy was drunk and just mowed over a bunch of kids. And he said, we wanted to kill him. And so I thought to myself, well, you can't do that in real life, but on the page you can.
But I have Atlas. Yeah.
Right, but there's also consequences in everything you do, and that's the other thing too, is part of having a scenario like Atlas Hargrove, is that, yeah, you know, you can be a loaded gun, but you know, every bullet hits something. And that's the way that this series works, is Atlas is the loaded gun, and eventually everything starts to fall apart. And then of course that lends to some of the excitement in the books moving forward. But that particular scene in Vacaville was inspired by my brother-in-law, and so that was a little tough to write, but it gives Atlas a reason to do what he did, which is of course to blow his life apart.
Yeah. And you also want to make sure he stays the guy you're rooting for, you know, so you needed
Yeah.
that really strong.
That's important. I think that whenever you look at guiding principles, like you can look at a bad guy, and bad guys, they're self-serving, a lot of them narcissistic. They just want to take care of themselves and do themselves. Atlas is not like that. Atlas is a guy who wants to take care of kids. He wants to find his own daughter. He's got so much love for his family that he really almost has blown apart everything else of value in his life. And so really he becomes this driven thing. And when he gets into prison, it's like, where's my drive? I'm locked down in here. And then when he has an opportunity, you know, he's grouchy, but he has an opportunity, he takes it. And I think that's part of it, is he really is grouchy. But his heart is in a really, really good place. And I made him a little grouchy too, so I could evolve him over the books. His evolution has been a lot of fun. And writing post-apocalyptic fiction too, I never really stick with one main character in the post-apocalyptic fiction. I mean, I do start that way, but in Atlas Hargrove, what that does is these series allow me to take the team that is being built around Atlas and really develop those characters out, so that you really feel like you have a family feel. That's one of the things I don't always see in you know, a lot of these action thrillers, is that kind of element of family. I wanted to bring that element of heart into it, because I think that's important. I think that's what really drives the book, but that's what also makes you really like the book and think about the book after the fact. And you know, there is violence in there, but this is all real violence. I learned street tactics for years, taught martial arts for years, fought semi-pro in California, and so I spent a lot of time understanding these things out of necessity, but now I can kind of put them to use in the books. And so I have to really dial back because stuff gets can get really nasty on the street. But having that element where people go, wow, that actually feels real. I try not to make it feel too real, but yeah, that's also something that you get in these books.
I recently watched a craft class, and I was talking about like what we love to write as writers, and the scenes that we love. And the instructor said, if you like George R. Martin, he loves, sex and battles and a good feast. And if he ever seems to get, bored, he writes this big giant feast with lots of food. And I can see like your strength is obviously, I mean, you have such background, so I can see how it would be easy for you to write a fight scene, or a violent scene, where for me, it'd be a lot of like, okay, whose arm is going where, and, and what's happening this. And I had to write a scene once where someone like had their throat cut, and I was having to find out what that was, how much work that was and how hard that was and that sort of thing. And that what took me to a dark place of research, asking people on the internet. So, so it's great that you already have all of those tools in your arsenal, for lack of a better term, and can use them.
I wish I didn't have some of the visions in my head though.
Yeah.
I had a buddy that I was at work. I've been full-time writing for about 4 or 5 years, but they had some of these terrible videos online, and he's like, I want to show you something. I said, no, I don't want to watch it. He goes, no, I want to show you something. I said, what do you want to show me? Because it's just this. And he had a video where it was a woman getting her head cut off by the cartel, and that scarred me so badly. I was like, I don't want to finish watching this. But when you look at, what that looks like, it's a different place you don't want to take your readers to. Yeah. Like you said, you can get to a place where it can get a little dark. That's one of the challenges, and this is why I don't 100% stay writing just the Atlas Hargrove. I mean, these last 3 books I wrote, one after the other, but it's because some of this stuff can get a little dark for you as the author. I mean, you don't want to lay that on the reader.
Yeah, because we can sanitize it a little bit, like in our yeah. And this is a great question for right now, coming in from John. He says he's coming in a little bit late, but he's wondering how you personally deal with the horror, the real bad guys. It's almost difficult to read. So that's with your filtration system. So yeah. Do you have a palate cleanser, or like?
I go through. Well, I do several layers of writing. I write it the way that I write the scenes the way I would fight the scenes. I do things the way I would do as I was trained, and then I run that by my beta team, and sometimes they freak out a little bit. They're like, it's too much. So, I write the way that I would like to write, and then I go back and I think to myself, if I had my grandmother reading this scene, what would she think? And I'm like, oh, she'd be horrified, right? So then I dial it back. And I have on my beta readers, I have several women who are in their late 60s and 70s. So I feel like I've got a pretty good group there. I've got a good mix of liberals and conservatives. I have a good mix of military. I've got firearm instructors in there, people who live in these countries. So I've got a really good mix. And that helps me really kind of clean things up. But mostly I try to just stay true to the story. And I go from that place of like this 5-foot view or 3-foot view or 7-inch view or 6-inch view. And I try to pull back and say, okay, let me give a 10-foot view or a 50-foot view, something that's not going to stop the reader. Because I have stopped the readers before in some of my post-APOC books. And I got to take a breath and come back. So I kind of learned.
You don't want them to step away.
Yeah, I learned the right mix. I triggered one guy's PTSD, which in probably one of my most popular books. And I felt really bad. And I'm like, okay, I have to dial back a little bit. There's too much truth in the fight or too much truth in these things. And so I learned in post-APOC really kind of how to clean a scene. And these are still violent. They're still violent, but I don't really read that much anymore because I can't. And so sometimes I don't always have a gauge, which is why I have to rely on my beta readers. So
when you say you can't read, is it strictly time?
Yeah, because when I write, I'll sit down and write sometimes for 12 hours at a time. My wife's like, get off the chair. So I'm like, I can't, I'm in this place. So I throw on music, and a lot of times, I let the music kind of guide the scene, but I'll usually write with super heavy metal, and the sad scenes I'll put like Lana Del Rey on or Enya or something like that. And the end scenes. I'll put on a big, a big kind of orchestra. So I write with different stuff with music, and that really kind of pushes me through. But I lose track of time, and so I by the time the day is over, I've got such digital fatigue, like screen fatigue, that I don't even want to look at a TV. I try to read my Kindle at night, but just my brain is so. Yeah, I don't, and I save the time to read in between books while my beta readers have the book. So I will read for a week or two. Like when I finished the last book, I read Every Last Secret. Loved it.
Plug, nice plug.
Yes. So people ask me what I read. A lot of times I will read soft stuff. I don't like reading hard stuff usually because I've been writing it. So I loved Every Last Secret. It reminded me, unfortunately, too much of where I was at, but I had a great time. It didn't, unfortunately. I actually felt like I was in kindred spirit here, but I read that. I'll read. I'm reading. I think it's Melinda Lee's book, her first Bree Tanner book, which is actually really good. So I try and get a book or two a month in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the sad things about becoming an author is like I know you said accidentally 50 to 100 a week, but I was the same. I would read at least 2 or 3 books a week before writing, and it was great because it gave me such a foundation to grow from. But we lose that as authors once we become, because you just don't have time. You can either work on your own book or you can read someone else's book. So someone said we need your writing playlist, and I agree. Do you write? I mean, do you create playlists on Spotify or anything like that?
I don't. I don't, because I don't know what I need to listen to the day I need to listen to it, and so I'll put it on and sometimes play with it. I listen to a lot of heavy metal music to put these things together, so I don't know that's necessarily going to be for everybody, but I'll listen to Hatebreed and Slayer and stuff like that, because what that does is that puts me in go mode. Go mode is fight mode, and I'm a driver too, so I have a sports car finally that I've been wanting for a long time. Needed about 30 books to buy. So I love to drive fast. I'm a driver. I've been a driver for all my life, so I like driving stuff. I like fighting stuff. I really like to kind of build a scene. I like humor when I'm doing humor. I'm usually not listening to that. That's a later kind of scrub as I built in that. But I just listen to heavy music. It's not my grandma would want to listen to.
Yeah. We have 2 comments that kind of tie in together. James said to think the end of the world is your stuff. And one of our team members said, is there a big difference between writing dark thrillers and your post-apoc work?
Well, there is a little bit. And really, what is the background? I love Jim's comments. Yeah. But as in terms of these books, I think it's almost easier writing thriller. I had to write thriller because I need to get away from the post-apoc for a minute. Things are starting to feel a little bit too real in real life, and I thought, oh man, I don't want to add to the fear, right? I'm sitting there going, holy crap, this is like my genre, and we're living through this freaking nightmare. And so I'm like, I don't want to add to the problems. I want to actually go in and write something different. So I went into this, and I don't have the dark end of the world feel in post-apoc, or excuse me, in thrillers I had in post-apoc, and so that was a bit of a relief. But man, I dug into that child trafficking stuff, and that seems almost bad in its own right. I tell my wife I need to write romance to just write everything in my brain so that I can get love back in my life in the books and put good out there. And my wife was telling me last night, she's like, man, if people didn't know you in real life, they'd think you were crazy. I'm like, I know, but that's the world I'm writing. You can be a sane person, write a crazy story, and that's fun. So yeah, my post-apoc is a little bit more tame, but it's also different. I think that both of them are action related, so it seems very, very easy for me.
And so looking at the development of this series, you're currently, book 5 is coming soon. There might be more. We'll see how the audience reacts. But are there any other things in the works with this series? It's currently in paperback book.
Yeah, it's in paperback book right now. And the Tears of Odessa series, I don't want to jinx myself, but the Tears of Odessa series is in Hollywood right now. So I've got a number of different groups that are looking at it. I've got an amazing producer who I love like a brother. That guy, he is the gentleman that did that brought Walking Dead to TV. So
Oh
he
wow.
found me in
Yeah.
post APOC. He's he loves the action genre as well. So he's got me in with several different groups right now. So that's happening. I also just signed a 5-book deal, audiobook deal with Podium, who's a terrific producer of audiobooks, and I got my fingers crossed. I'm hoping to get David Boldaki's narrator to read the book. He's shown
Wow.
interest, and just looking at scheduling now. So if that's the case, I'm going to have a fantastic audiobook narrator there. So yeah, that's going right now. And so as those come together, I'll look at marketing. This has been a passion project for me. So I've kept it kind of under the radar a little bit more than some of my other work, and I want to see kind of how these other things go, and then I'll probably blow a huge marketing campaign at this book and really send it through the roof.
I'm going to ask a question that I hate when people ask me, but you might have a good answer for it. And that's, if you were going to cast, like if your producer called and said, we have a deal, it's going here, it's going there. Who do you want? Like, who is your wish list? If you had, a couple of actors that we could approach for Atlas, is there anybody that you like pictured in your mind when you're writing his character?
Well, we talked about a lot of it. I've also got my Last War series that's in Hollywood as well. So we've had over the last year and a half, my producer and I've had over the last year and a half, a lot of conversations about casting. I've been watching the Gray Man series come together, which is I love those books. I'm watching that series to come together, and then also Jack Carr's series come together, Terminal Velocity, and they actually cast some really good guys that I would look at. I think if I was to do a character for Atlas, the one that I could say that would be most like him would be like Frank Grillo. Frank Grillo's I love Frank Grillo. He's basically, but that's the problem is if you're going to go to Hollywood, you have to go with big actors, big name actors. And so many
I would rather a smaller one because
right.
you don't associate them with any other roles,
Yeah.
But they like the big names. Yeah.
Frank Grillo was in like The Purge, and he was in a movie called Boss Level, which I absolutely love so much. It's on Hulu. It's like Groundhog Day for action junkies. And when I watch him, I'm like, holy crap, that's Atlas right there. But you have to attract them. You've got movies made of your books. You have to attract money, and money comes with billable actors. And then you need producers. You need to get a showrunner on that's going to either take you into a series or a director that has name recognition, because it has to be pushed. And so it is definitely a challenge, but I do love Frank Grillo for this. It would be someone different, but I think that they're too polished. I want someone gritty and
But
mean.
you never know, I mean, you think about shows like, I mean, I don't know, but Sons of Anarchy, I mean, if Charlie Hunnam was in stuff before that, I wasn't aware of it. So, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I like him, but yeah, he's not gritty enough. You need someone.
No, not for this. Yeah, I agree with that.
What's the guy's name? Oh man, I'm having a mind blank here. I'll remember in a second. But the guy from the Olympus Has Fallen and London Has Fallen, those movies.
Gerard Butler.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. I kept thinking Gerard Depardieu, and I'm like, that's the French dude, that ain't him. But no, Gerard Butler would be perfect. But by the time you put this series out, he's going to age too much. But if Gerard Butler was available like 5 years ago, he would be perfect. He's gritty for this too. I think he would be great. So
yeah, I love that. I love that you have answers. Whenever I've ever been asked that, I always am like, I can't think of anyone. Like even great actors. Like, no, they're wrong. Mm-hmm. Well, we are out of time. I know that you have been kind enough to give away some signed paperbacks of Tears of Odessa. So we have 3 winners. And huge congrats to Charles, Karen, and John. We'll email tomorrow with details of how to get your prizes. So check your email. and you'll have a signed paperback coming your way.
Okay.
If they're interested in reading this series, there is a site just for it, right? AtlasHargrove.com.
AtlasHargrove.com. That's brand new. That's just up. So yeah, AtlasHargrove.com is there. Also, you can go to my author page at RB Schow, SCHOW. Looks kind of funny, but it rhymes with cow.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you for joining us. Thank
Thanks,
you to all of our readers who chimed in, and catch us again at another Binge Books live author chat. We'll be back in a month with another author. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ryan. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, guys.